Hello, everybody. Hello, welcome to HyperDoc Online Bootcamp. I'm Kelly Hilton, and this is Lisa Highfield.
Hi, you guys. How are you?
Hi. We're really excited to work with you starting today. And first of all, before we get started, we're hoping if someone out there in the chat could give us a little, let us know that the sound is working. Just give us a little comment in the chat feature. Make sure you can all hear us okay, and all of our technical parts of our broadcast are working today. That would be really great. Looks like we have 1 viewer, 3 viewers, so that's good. They can help us out there.
Yeah. So I'll be moderating the comments today, so anytime you have a question or an aha or just want to communicate with each other, go ahead and post your comments and I'll be answering and throwing in links and helping you out there. Kelly is our hostess today. Sarah is also moderating comments. She'll be joining us shortly as well. So
yes, thanks, Lisa. You can
good.
tell poor Lisa's got a little cold or something. So I'll be hosting today, walking us through. Thank you for who was that from?
Maria and Techno Teacher.
Awesome. Thank you guys for finding
everyone.
the chat and letting us know it's all working. Hey, Happy New Year, everyone. Today was our first day back to school, and I don't know if it's your first day or you've been back for a week, but it's a new year. It's a HyperDoc boot camp, and we're working out. We're going to be spending the next 4 weeks together, and it works out really well because we have 4 chapters in the HyperDoc handbook. And so each week you'll see one of us leading and hosting the webinar. And starting today, we're gonna be talking about chapter 1, and then next week, Sarah will do chapter 2, and the week after that, Lisa will do chapter 3. And the 4th week, we invite you guys to join our hangout by sharing your HyperDocs, and we just host and listen to you talk about what you created. So we're gonna go through all of those details, but just really excited that you're here. And if you're joining us later, welcome then. So let's get started. If you've already watched the orientation, you saw that we talked about using the presentation and also the web link for the Hangout. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of both. I'll be showing parts of the presentation and then also talking to you live. So I'm going to start by going to the presentation from the scope and sequence. And as you can see here, it says that our focus is chapter 1. We're really going to be talking about pedagogy and practice today, and we'll start sharing a lot of lesson ideas. If you want to access this just from watching the webinar, here's a shortened URL for you to follow along. So let's just start with our global classroom. One of the most amazing things that has been coming from this cohort in this class that we've been teaching is connecting with educators around the world. And when we took a look at all of the people who had signed up for this course, we noticed that people were tuning in from all over. In fact, we put it together on this little map so that everybody could see where the people are from. And you'll notice there's clusters of people from all over. There's a lot all over the United States, but it looks like we have some people over here in South Africa who's in our cohort. And also, let's see, where is this? Bangladesh. It's amazing. And we're going to be working with teachers from South Korea and with some teachers from Taiwan. So what's really a huge benefit to this course is just that, meeting with teachers from around the world and sharing ideas and creating digital lessons. And that's what we're going to be doing. So as we talked about in the orientation, we have this scope and sequence that really is going to be the lifeline to everything that we'll be doing over the next 4 weeks. So we've bookmarked this page. In fact, you can see it's right here on our Teachers Give Teachers. And you can bookmark things by just going bookmark this page, because if you ever get lost in the class, this is where you're going to want to just check in every Monday. So we try to make it really all in one place for you, just like a nice HyperDoc is. It has everything in one place packaged. We have the course description and syllabus. And then along the top was the orientation that if you haven't had a chance to watch, I think it might be helpful. It just shows you kind of our thinking behind turning in links and connecting and collaborating. And this form right here is really important. It's a Google form where we ask you to please tell us a little bit about yourselves so that we can just really put you guys in the best groups and get to know you and respond to where you're at. So if you haven't done so already, please fill out that Google form. It is different than the one that was sent to you when you initially signed up for the course. And then if you're online already, you've already found the access to the live hangout here, the presentation slides. We will be adding transcripts from the chat later on today. These are some templates to help you with your homework assignment, and then here's your homework assignments for the week. So really our thinking behind this course is that you have, we meet every Monday, and then during the week, we on that Monday, we will go through things live from 4 to 5, which is Pacific Standard Time. So we have people from around the world, so that's the time zone that we're in. You can watch it live or later. And then during the week, after today's webinar, we really encourage all of you to connect and talk to each other and through your smaller cohorts. Now, some of the groups have started to form already, and we want to let you know that we put you into groups. We're trying to group people based on their positions. So we're looking to put teachers together, instructional coaches together, and administrators together. So, you know, if you have a question about the group that you're in, or you want to make a change or have an idea or something, please let us know. You can email that instructor individually. Now, all 3 of us are here for all of you all the time, but we're just trying to make smaller groups for one contact person. And we'll talk more about that as we go through. Okay, so moving forward, we want to start with
where— Did you show their groups?
Not yet.
Okay. You
Not
will.
yet.
Okay.
I will show the groups right now before we head on in to what you already know. And let's go take a look back at the scope and sequence. The groups are here on the bottom. And you'll see we have Lisa has group 1 and group 2. At the bottom of the scope and sequence, when you find your name, you would click on the group number. So in this example, you would click on group number 1. And this is where you'll be working with your smaller cohort, introducing yourself. Oh, look at this. Maria is all ready. I love that.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you, Maria. What a star student. That really helps people to understand. So we try to model what we're looking for across the top row there, and then you can just add your information yourself. And that way we can find you on Twitter, and we can email you, and you guys can meet each other too. So that's what the groups are like. Lisa has the groups that are mostly instructional coaches, correct? And then I have a couple of groups. I have group 3, we believe, is mostly administrators from looking at what we could find on the spreadsheets. And group 4 is mostly teachers. And then Sarah has 2 groups of teachers. So if you find yourself in a group that doesn't quite fit your category, just let us know, and we can still make some adjustments. So that is the scope and sequence. So the first thing that we wanted to have for starting this boot camp is finding out what do you already know about HyperDocs and what you want to know. So if you're following along on the presentation, whoops, we have slide number 4. It says, has an image, and it says, what do you know and what do you want to know? And below the image is a little tiny URL. So I'm going to ask everyone to click on that tiny URL, all 16 viewers who are with us live, and if you're watching later, you'll do it after. And I'm going to ask you to please take a look. This is a Google Doc with a table, and now we can see it's happening live. We have all of the people joining. It's very exciting when we see that happening. And we're just gonna, this is a collaborative doc, the share settings. Let's make sure they're on the right share settings. Anyone who has the link can edit it. So that is where we're at with it right now. And we would just like you to take a couple of minutes to start sharing what do you already know about HyperDocs. And you can put your cursor in there and start typing. And then also, what do you want to know? What brought you to signing up for this course? What do you want out of this course? In fact, while we're here, Sarah and Lisa will be moderating this document as well, and they can start seeing things and responding to people. And there is just nothing like looking at a Google Doc and everybody starting to share. And when you think about it, like when we think back to that map that we were just looking at, you could be on the same doc right now with, you know, people from totally different part of the world, which is really, really interesting and exciting. So thank you for participating already. If you run out of room, and we get to the bottom and you would like to add a table or a row, I tried to put about 50 slots, but we have more than 50 people in this course. You would just put your cursor at the bottom and then you can click tab and you can add some more rows. But otherwise, find a row and go for it. I love seeing this.
I love seeing how much you already know. You're right on with some of your comments. I'm really impressed.
Absolutely. Way for teachers to package and organize.
Hyperlinks.
Yeah, great way to differentiate. Some people have been reading chapter 1 already. A document with a lot of links, question mark. That is so true. Awesome. I love seeing all of this. So
Twitter friends, yes.
Twitter friends.
We talk on Twitter a lot.
Yeah. Templates to modify. All these are really great. So some questions are, what are the best practices? And hopefully we're going to be answering those questions for you. And also we really try to model best practices for you. And so as you're a student in this class, we encourage you to consider what we're doing. What are we doing to try to teach you through this class? And that's part of it as well. And then if you have suggestions along the way, or feedback for us, the three of us, this is our 5th cohort. And so every single time we go back and we reflect, and we've changed it several times and we try to make it better, just like all teachers do. So if you have any feedback for us, please let us know along the way, because we really want to make sure that we meet the needs of all of our learners. It's a really important part to us. So I think we're ready to start talking about chapter 1. Chapter 1 is about transformative instruction. And, you know, I think teaching is just a journey. And so if you think about it, from when you started teaching to where you're at now, and if you're a new teacher, you've probably already seen growth in yourself. That's the part that's amazing. And with HyperDocs, it's definitely changing and evolving all the time. But what we try to talk about in chapter 1 is how our instruction really changed from not just teaching with technology for saying, hey, look, we use technology, to actually instructing and choosing wisely and carefully transforming our lessons so that they were really redefining the learning experience. So in chapter 1, there's a foreword that's on there. And if you're following along on the presentation, I'm on slide 6 now. And the foreword was really kind of some magical words that were written by a high school student named Jordan Moldenhauer. And believe it or not, this amazing student is Lisa Highfield's niece.
Yes, she is.
Very proud of her. And she had been kind of involved with us as we started creating HyperDocs and been talking to her aunt about it. And we asked her to kind of write about her feeling as a student. And so that's when she shared, and she wrote this foreword and then shared it with us. We were just blown away with her words. And some things that really resonated was that learning is an exploration of the topics that I have a passion for and curious about or haven't heard of yet. And that's what we try to do with HyperDocs. And she also states, teach me what I need to know, but also teach me how to figure it out. The real world isn't about what's going to be on the test. The real world is a test, and we are all taking it. So Jordan's letter, basically her memoir, her little narrative essay that she shared with us, we just all read it together. Actually, when we were writing the book, we had a phone conversation with her and shared what we're trying to accomplish and shared some lesson ideas with her. And this amazing student wrote the letter and then sent it to us, and we just went, oh my gosh, this is the foreword. This is the student voice. So in honor of Jordan, other students like her, and also for ourselves, we really encourage teachers to just think of HyperDocs as becoming an assigner, not an assigner, and a designer of your own learning, because when we're teaching and we just assign the tasks because that's what we've always done, or because that's what we were told other people did, that's something that happens. But when you are really designing lessons and putting together a HyperDoc, you're really thinking carefully about who's on the other side of that lesson and how can you modify it and personalize it to meet the needs, individual needs of your students. So that's one of our kind of main mottos that we're trying to accomplish with designing HyperDocs, is that it's really empowering. If you think about it, if you've ever borrowed a lesson from a colleague or something, maybe it went okay, but maybe it didn't go the same way as it did for that colleague, because when we design things on our own, we really have ownership of it, and we're still meeting the standards. We're still using adopted curriculum. We're just really thinking carefully about our students from start to finish beforehand, and designing those experiences and making meaning of them ourselves so that we can teach the students. And what happens as a result is we're using the technology, but we're also really always asking ourselves, what is it that I can do now that I couldn't do before? And HyperDocs, kind of one of the main things about HyperDocs is that they go back and forth between consumption, where students are using them to learn something, and consume. And if you think about yourself as a learner, that's what we do. Maybe right now you're learning about HyperDocs, so you're reading the book, you're listening to this webinar, you're reading, you know, the hashtag on Twitter. And then there's the time when you transition from consuming information to creating on your own. And that's what we think really makes HyperDocs transformational, because we move into not just creating, but also collaborating and critical thinking and connecting with classrooms around the world. And that's the redefinition. That's the part that really makes them different than just using technology to say that you use it. So in order to kind of illustrate this point, I want to share with you a little bit of a personal journey story with teaching in this way. In slide 10 on the presentation, the words just read that one of the things that has happened is we went from transformative products, like having a product when I was teaching, to really more transformative teaching. And as educators, you may have heard of something called like process over product. The product is what students end up creating at the end, but the learning is happening all along the way. And hopefully you find that in yourself as well, as we're all learning together. I know I do myself, as I'm constantly learning. So let's talk about this transformation and what happens. I want to share a little example over 3 years worth of just kind of evolving as an educator. So the first year that I started really implementing technology in my classroom, one of the projects that I did was, it was a science fair time, and students were asked to it was an optional project to participate in the science fair. And in our schools, and everyone's schools are different, when students do a science fair, there's usually a big cardboard piece of trifold paper that students display a lesson that they've created, and they turn that in, and it goes into the multi-purpose room, and everyone walks around and looks at it. So this year I decided I'm going to have my students create presentations on video. And if they didn't have access to video, I was going to record them for them, and then I uploaded it to a YouTube playlist. So this was the product, okay? So the students were still asked to do the science fair, but instead of creating a board, they created a video. Okay, so that's step one. That's 2013, my classroom having this transformation to using the technology. So that was really great and that was fun, but honestly, I had to really reflect after that year and ask myself, okay, so did my teaching change? Did their learning change? And to be honest, a lot of students in our community had parental help. They mostly made the videos at home. If they presented in class and we watched the videos, what ends up happening is still all 33 kids in my class were still standing up and presenting. It's just that now we're watching the videos. So it did feel a little, in some respect, like substitution, although it was captured. So it was just really, my reflection is it wasn't right, wrong, or indifferent. It was more like my learning progression. So I realized the next year, I still want them to create a video, but I would like them, I'm going to teach them how, I'm going to do it in class. I'm going to structure my lesson more. That's going to give them, help them be more successful and help all students learn. So the next year I created what is called version 1 of the HyperDoc, which is on slide 12. It's called Exploring Physical Science. And I want you to take a look at that with me here. And this is really the beginning of trying to instruct beyond just having the product. So this is a multimedia text set because it starts with regular old text. Students, you need to have your textbook out. You're going to be reading these chapters and taking notes in your notebooks. Once you're done with that, it's kind of a jigsaw. You're going to hop on to this Google Doc where there's a table. And on the left-hand side of the table, you're going to explore videos, play some games, look at some images, and play vocabulary flashcard games. I curated all this content so that they could go through the content and then capture the thinking. And the idea here being that this text set now, I'm instructing more, what not just like create a science video, more like learn about this whole unit of physical science. And we did this blended approach where you're still using our textbook and you're using the multimedia text. And then once you've done that, the directions were here on what makes a good science fair presentation and what parts are going to be on it. And here's some resources for you. And here's the expectations for you. And turn in your link. So that is sort of the year 2 of the transition. The teaching that changed really was giving them the entire assignment from start to finish and including a multimedia text set for information. So that's the second year of implementation. Then the third year of implementation evolved into this version 2. You can notice that my design, I changed a little bit. I changed some of the links. Students still had to go through, but once they went through those links, I prompted them with some more questions. I actually changed the apply, and then we added a collaborative piece here to the bottom. So this one topic that was taught in the classroom kind of evolved over the 3 years. But what was missing from the beginning was that I did not really instruct. It was just create. Just go create something and assume that they're going to have it. But when I evolved into the other text sets, I was giving them the background. I was giving them more of a focus. So that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about as far as instruction goes. So that's just sort of an example of what we ask, what teachers have found, I think, is when you think of a lesson that you want to revamp, that you want to reimagine, that you just don't want to teach in the same way anymore. That's when you decide, oh my gosh, okay, I think I'm ready to HyperDoc that, because you can't just dive in and HyperDoc everything. It's really that thoughtful pedagogy going into it. So going back to the slides, on slide number 13, we're talking a little bit about flexible grouping. And we just can't talk about this kind of teaching without addressing the physical space. We have our digital space and our physical space. And so we have a couple examples for you on this slide. This first example is a classroom. And let me just explain it to you, first of all. Imagine that this is the front door here, and every little turquoise circle is a student, okay? And so in this flexible grouping classroom, imagine that you have, say, 33 students and 11 Chromebooks. So you're really 3 to 1 in the classroom. So when we say that HyperDocs maximize face time and give you a chance to personalize instruction, this is kind of a picture of why that happens. in this classroom, what's happening is in this circle, this red circle, is the first group of students sitting with the teacher. The teacher is here. The teacher is talking to a smaller group of students. There's only 11 students there. Personalized instruction, conferring with them. They may or may not have technology with them. You're teaching. You know, you may have them grouped homogeneously or heterogeneously. It doesn't matter. You know your students, you're having time with them. And you can have an extended amount of time or routine amount of time, because what's also happening is these three groups. There's this group, and this group, which is the next set of 11 students. And those three groups add up to 11 students who have the 11 devices. So what they're doing is working on a HyperDoc, working on a project. You've already taught whole group what needs to happen. Well, this kind of teaching takes time, so they can be working on the assignments, on their project that they're working on. It could be project-based learning. It could be consuming, creating, collaborating, whatever you're working on. And then you'll notice there's this group of students kind of scattered throughout, and those kids are working independently. We all still have to assign and teach things for independent time. So this is what we call kind of an optional way of teaching with HyperDocs for flexible grouping. It's called the station rotation model. So imagine you plan for an hour and a half, 2 hours, you break it into 3 amounts of time, and all the kids rotate through, and you have more face time with all the groups. Another model is also on that slide, and this one's just called the 2-to-1 device, but really this could be 3-to-1 device as well. And if you look at this classroom here, it kind of looks like a traditional classroom, but let me explain it more in detail to you. Again, each of these turquoise circles would represent a student. So you would have 2 students. When we say 2-to-1, it's 2 students. And this white little dot is the 1 device. So again, imagine you have 34 students. Now you have 17 devices, and each group of students has 1 device. Now we actually totally recommend this model for multimedia text sets. In fact, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. When we talk about multimedia text sets, we actually really focus on how to lead PD with teachers. In fact, when we have 30 teachers in a professional development that we're leading, we actually ask the teachers to go 2-to-1, to put 1 device away and to sit next to each other and go through the text set. And let me tell you, what's happened then is it's shifted. Believe me, Sarah and Lisa and I have presented so many times on this. And every time the 3 of us present, we come back and we reflect about what's worked and what didn't work. And what works, even with adults, is when you give everybody a text set, they kind of look at it a little bit and then they'll check their email or something. If you say, okay, take the device away, pick 1 device, put it between you like Lisa and I right now, go through the text set together, the room gets loud, people start talking, they start asking questions, really becoming curious.
Right, and it's great for the teacher because formative assessment happens right away. Instead of them being silent or with earbuds, you hear their conversations.
Yes.
You can hear what they are thinking, what level they're taking things to. It is a game changer. So even if you have 1-to-1, I can say you should really do text sets.
Choose
2-to-1,
the
3-to-1.
time. And text sets are the time to learn and consume the information. So when I learn, like, I need some time to process, but I learn so much better when I read a little or watch a video, and then I could go, well, what do you think about that? And we reflect together. And so you want kind of that clatter, that little noise happening, not just in your classrooms, but for those of you who are administrators that are joining us, when you have a meeting. I recently went to our district Common Core meeting where one of our administrators took a lot of the work we've been doing. She created a multimedia text set, gave it to all of us, and asked us to go through it and look at it and process it. So if you just allow that time in a meeting for 20 minutes and then you have a whole group debrief, it really changes the way the conversation goes, because then people have time to process. So that's what we mean by the flexible grouping.
We have a quick question.
Quick question, yes.
So for station rotation, it sounds like it starts whole group instruction followed by stations.
Yes, that is true. For station rotation, you really need to set it up where everybody kind of knows what their job is going to be. But I have to say, you can get it down to the point where, you know, if you create a HyperDoc, that students are going to have a little bit of time each day, like 30 minutes to work on a project. It's really like you've done the teaching beforehand. Now they need to create and collaborate together. Then they will know what to do every day during that tech station. And then when they're not on the technology and they're working independently, or they're maybe collaborating during that time but without technology, they know what to do as well, because that's the blend. You want to have both. But what that allows you to do is meet in that smaller group and really check in and problem solve and all of that. And when I was in the classroom, I would just push those assignments out in Google Classroom. And even when I was on, you know, take on leave for other assignments that I had to do, like for the district or something, for subplan, station rotation, I could set it up the day before, say, hey, I'm not going to be here tomorrow, but tomorrow here's your 3 stations. And substitutes were like, wow, this is amazing. We had, you know, 2 hours of everybody really working collaboratively because they know the expectation. So thank you for that question. Okay, so that is flexible grouping. And we're going to move on. So we're going to be talking about chapter 1, as we said, and the next like 5 or 6 slides from the slide deck, I was trying to just show you examples of the thinking behind a multimedia text set. Now, today, I know the course is on HyperDocs, and I know that we're going to be creating HyperDocs, but today's lens is how to create a multimedia text set first. And there is a difference, and we're going to talk about that. And the reason being is as we have been teaching people, we realized that it helps to first transition into text sets and then transition into the actual HyperDoc. And so for those of you who are already leading professional development, we recommend that to you. We actually, if we do 2 sessions, we usually do text sets on day 1, HyperDocs day 2, just so that people kind of can see the difference. Text sets, consumption, exploration, extension activities, all of those things. So here's some examples of text sets. The first one is called integration of knowledge. And Common Core standards ask students to take knowledge from all over and blend it together and really share their overall synthesis of the information. And so in this text set, it's just a beautiful text set on this amazing book called Each Kindness. And the book, after reading the book aloud to students, now if you're a middle school teacher or if you're a principal, you can still do picture book read alouds. In fact, there's so much to be learned in these. And we have a lot of examples of text sets that we've made into collections around a theme for our district, you know, around diversity, around growth mindset. And so this text set, you read aloud the story, and then you have the resources where students can go back and read it aloud. They have videos to watch to extend their thinking, stories, ideas, lists. They're really getting deeper into the theme of the story without knowing this. And this was actually used, this could be used from really 2nd grade to 12th grade, if you ask me. And what the students do is in I learned, they would just jot there what they learned there. And so the design of this is very simple. It's a Google Doc with the page color change, which we're going to talk about designing that later, in a table. So that's one example of how to just use a text set around one topic. You know, you can think of anything that you need to teach and then link all the resources up on the one left-hand side of the table and give everyone a space to reflect. I have to admit as well, as a student, I've been creating text sets myself around different topics, but we'll talk about that more later. So the next text set is on slide number 15, if you're following along, and we call this inquiry-based learning, because this example of a text set is, it starts with a video. Let's explore the United States. Found this really exciting video, and you show the video whole group, and then you give the students, and the video highlights all of the United States if you're learning about the United States of America. The text set, then you give it to them. It has videos, photo essays, slideshows, games, images, and students now explore all around the United States in which is leading up to choosing a topic that they're going to be exploring more deeply and doing a more of a project around. So that was the intent around this text set. First, explore the entire United States. Where do you want to know more about? If you ask students, like pick a state to talk about, or a place, or a special place to you, they're going to only do what they know. So with a text set, you can bring them to different places anywhere in the world, and then they might get curious about it. So this is really like a curious building HyperDoc. Play with this. Spend a day or two exploring the United States before you choose a topic. That's what this example is. The next example is on the slide deck. It's called basically a scaffolding lessons. You can use these multimedia text sets to scaffold your lessons. And this is going to be an example, but before we go to it, I want you to notice on the slides, it says at the bottom here, tinyurl.com/Hilton Lab. This is just a little idea for you. Everyone's in different places with technology integration. So if you're an educator who only gets to use technology when you go to the computer lab once a week, then one of a little tip and trick is to create a personalized URL in that way with your name on it, so that when you go to the lab, the students know what to do exactly. And all you do is keep building on your template each week. So notice this template ends with June because the top lesson goes to the top. And when you scroll down, you'll see what this class did each time they went into the lab. So the teacher just builds on the document. And that's just a little workflow idea where you have the personal URL and you create a Google Doc, you create your first lesson back in September, or in this case, maybe you're going to start this next week. And you have a January date and a little table, and you can see what this class did all year long. Here's another incredible added benefit. I love this part of HyperDocs. Guess what? You're obviously a technology leader if you're taking this class, but maybe some of your colleagues are not quite there yet, and they're not sure what to do, and they don't know how to do it. So what if you create a text set for your lessons in this way and share it with them? They'll see exactly what you're doing, and then they can start trying it out with their students as well. Another thing I've seen teachers do is share these docs in Google Classroom with each other, or join each other's classrooms so that they can then learn from each other in that way. So that's an example of a text set that is built upon all year long, starting from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And each week, you just build on it, and you keep that personalized URL so that students can then know exactly where to go. So if you're missing a day, again, everybody knows what to do when they go to the lab. So that is just another example. Okay, so now we're going to move to slide number 17. And slide number 17 reminds me to check in with you guys. So far, let's just recap. This week, we're focusing on multimedia text sets. Multimedia means video, images, games, simulation, any media you can find online that will teach your students. So you really have to start becoming a collector around topics that you want to create a text set on. And so we're going to ask you to explore examples and then create one this week. And so far, the kind of examples that we've shared are the kind that are Google Doc with a table on it. On the left-hand side of the table is the resource links, and on the right-hand side is where students would respond to questions. Additionally, we recommend that if you're creating a text set, you put the text set on the Google Doc, and then you have the students consume it with one device and 2 students. Are there any questions so far that we need to address?
We're just doing it here, just lots of really good questions.
Oh, awesome.
About
Awesome.
tech sets and, you know, what they're meant to be for.
Okay.
So
great.
You might want to go back and rewatch this video after.
Right. That's one thing I wanted to mention. If we go pretty quickly, you can go back and rewatch. So now we're going to launch in to 2 other styles of tech sets. They're still tech sets, but they're other styles. The first one is what we call the game board tech set. And it's just a different way to package for students. And we always like to give Genevieve Paqueta a shout out. She is a local instructional coach. Where is she from? Union District here in California. And Genevieve took the tech set concept to kind of a whole new level. She created a different way of packaging. So check this out on slide number 18. These are 2 game boards. The one on the left was used for professional development. So since we have a lot of administrators and coaches here, we want to talk to you about that. And they were actually both used for professional development, but the one on the right was also used for students. So this packaging is just totally different. It's still a Google Doc. And this Google Doc just looks like the good old game board. Now, here's how you work this, this basic game board. For professional development, this was used when we had new teachers coming to our district and they didn't know all of our digital world. They needed to know where to get tech support, where the assessment calendar is. You can see all of each little box has important information and links. So literally we gave this game board to all of the teachers, and then we gave them about 45 minutes to click around and start orientating themselves to the information. And guess what we were doing as coaches? We walked around and we had conversations with our new teachers. We answered individual questions, and we really kind of had to make a decision. Like, this is all important information. Should we stand and deliver? Should we make a slideshow and have everyone listen to us talk about it? Or can we put it in one place and then they have it? Did they get to all of it in the 45 minutes? Not really. But then they had it and they knew where to go when they came back. So imagine the kind of the layers of what's happening here. Number 1, the teachers are getting the information. Number 2, they're seeing a way of teaching. You're modeling it as a leader. And number 3, they have this resource to come back to at any time. So that's the game board example. And another game board example is this incredible election tech set. So this was made back in the fall. And you'll notice that, does it say turn this in on this day? Or does this say, like, make sure you answer questions after you read this electoral process fair? No, because that's not the purpose of the game board multimedia tech set. The thing is, the point we're trying to get across is transformative instruction is sometimes letting go of the product. It's about creating that curiosity and giving students the time to learn so they can process and then form their own opinions about it. And that's what tech sets do. So if you give them the tech set, you can watch as they get really curious on their own and they start clicking around and talking to their partner and wanting to go deeper. So let's say you give them, if you're a high school teacher and you shared this tech set, the game board one, and maybe your class periods are 45 minutes or so, so you decide to schedule 2 days in one school week to give students to explore. In those 2 days, you can then have one-on-one time with every student in your class, which probably never happens as often as it should in high school, at least in bigger classrooms. And you can also, after those 2 days, spend some time now asking students what they learned, what do they want to know more, and where they're going to go with that information, and how does it apply to what your standards are when you have to teach. So tech sets just have a ton of benefits.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah.
So one thing that questions that have been coming up, really good questions and comments about how do we know kids are learning in this. And we could make them do some sort of formative assessment or fill out a form or record something. But, think about this. If you give kids a list of questions to use and go through this text set, then what are the kids going to do when they go through the text set? They're just going to look for the answers to the questions. And it really inhibits how far they really could go with their learning. We want to teach kids how to explore and be curious, and you have to create those kinds of moments and experiences for them so that they are curious and so that they do care. And we've really seen that it takes time and it takes practice. Kids want to do things for, well, how many points do I get? What's my grade going to be? And so we try to work with them as learners. And I think this is, why we call it the gateway to HyperDocs, is we're really teaching them how to learn independently, how to, have a quest for knowledge. And I want to know more. I want to explore all of these. I love the game board because it goes in any order. We do that on purpose. I had a little second grader using a game board, and they said, can I learn in any order I want to? And I was like, yes. And they were so relieved. I mean, kind of made me sad, though. They're used to being told what to do, and they do just what they're told.
It's not about checking the boxes.
Yeah.
And also think about the differentiation. So your students will be learning about themselves as a learner. So if they like the videos and they learn in that way, they'll see that. Right. But if they like to go to the articles, and then you can have them reflect on that. And also, students can make these. These are, they're very resourceful. What if you're looking at this and you're thinking, gosh, I might be able to make one, but that's going to take a long time. And then I have all these other topics and subjects I need to cover. Well, have students create them for each other and teach them how to find relevant, good sources and stuff that might be interesting for other people to view.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's great to put more on there than you necessarily would expect to get through. But think about those topics where there's so much you could cover and you never get to it all. This is kind of a place for those kids who, I know when my son was studying World War II, he could have studied that all year, right. But they had to move on. So imagine if you just loaded up a text set with all these different aspects about the war. He could have explored that on his own and been really curious about it instead of just limited to these little blips of information.
Well, and that's something we're going to be talking about as well. When we do move from text sets to HyperDoc lesson designing, text sets can be your explore part of your HyperDoc, but they could also be your extend part. They could be your engage. They don't have to have the full game board. They could be 3 or 4 links. It doesn't have to be this, comprehensive either. So you're really just thinking about like think about yourself. Like what do we do when we want to learn information? We hop online, we find some cool resources. Well, do that for your kids and then put them all in one place and pull it out. It's much more engaging than out of the textbook, and you'll still find that they will go farther with their learning. In this way, they'll be more engaged, and you'll have more time with them to really process the information. Okay, so moving forward, those are some examples of game board multimedia text sets. And then the last example that we have here in this little part of the presentation is called Meet All Students' Needs. And that's on slide 19. And so this HyperDoc was designed actually for a high school resource course. And these students, this was a one-to-one classroom, so we all have different classrooms. It's just another model to show. In this text set, what happened is the students and the teacher, you notice it says model, did the first reading together. And this was because the teacher was showing the students the thinking strategies, which was their teachable lesson. Then the teacher showed them how to add this Chrome extension called Read and Write for Google. And she modeled it, but you could also, it's linked on here, like how to add it. And it's a wonderful Chrome extension to differentiate. And then they did a close reading on this HyperDoc. So the close reading strategies are when you read a text 3 times. So you notice the first read, they used the Chrome extension and they clicked on it, and the story was just read aloud to them. Think about that. We didn't used to have access to that before. That could really help our students with differentiating. The second reading, they used the Google Doc to highlight important words that they wanted to learn and comment and go ahead and share defining it. And in their third read, they jotted their thinking here. So in this red part of the doc, the teacher modeled this whole group, and the students kind of watched and participated. Then you give them the document and you say, there you go. Now you know how to do a close read. And so here's another text. And notice that text is really broken down. It's just really thinking through the reading lesson before you give it to students. And this could really happen at any age group. It could be jigsawed, it could be for a PD, whatever works for you. So the next thing we're gonna move into is, we've talked about Google Docs and tables. We've talked about Google Docs and game boards. Now we're going to talk about another tool that can be considered a multimedia text set, and that's a tool called ThingLink. I don't know if you've used it before, but what we have on slide number 20 is an example of a HyperDoc that has 3 parts to it: an explore, explain, and extend. And then when you click on the extend portion of the HyperDoc, it takes you to this ThingLink. So the idea being, they did an activity to explore, the teacher did some explaining, and then if they had time, they could go to this text set on the ThingLink. In each button, the teacher curated relevant information for the students to then, again, just click on the links and explore the concept. Now, the benefit of ThingLink is it's really visual. It's kind of fun to just see these little buttons and create them. And the website itself has a lot already created, so you might find one that works for you already and you can make a copy of it or remix it. The other benefit is that this is really the pure exploration, because notice there's nowhere to jot down your thinking or anything. It's just learning information. But again, as we were talking about before, that's the point. This is an extension activity. But this other example is using a ThingLink. And in this HyperDoc, it was used as an exploration. So it's right here. You'll notice after we did these activities, you move into the explore and about Africa. So same concept, ThingLink. And now all of these resources were carefully curated by the instructor to follow along with the lesson objective. And students spent about 45 minutes in a computer lab learning these concepts. So ThingLink is a great way to really put together your ideas as well for multimedia text sets. So I am going to move ahead because we've been talking about multimedia text sets, and they really are the gateway. We call them the gateway to HyperDocs. And this is how you would go ahead to create one. You can start from scratch, depending on your knowledge of using ThingLink or using a Google Doc, or you could even make them on a Google Slide or Google Form, whatever you want to work with. You can find someone else's and do a file, make a copy, and insert your own resources. And then we've also provided for you 2 templates today. So the first template is the game board. If you liked that idea, here it is. All you have to do is click File, Make a Copy, and then you will have it. You can put your name there. You can put it in your own folders, and you can start really creating your own experience for your students. Another example of our template that we've provided is the table template. So you have your essential questions and an image, potentially. You put your text and media on the table on the left and student responses on the right. So all of these different ways of using text sets. Keep in mind whatever your learning objective is. If you want to know, if you want your students to respond, then you're definitely going to have to do the 2-column table so that they can type their notes or respond. If you just want them to click around, then use ThingLink or the game board template. Okay, so one of the next things we want to do is talk a little bit about how to create these. And we call this our multimedia text set design school. And so this week, Google Docs is going to be featured in design school because we use these a lot. And you can follow along with me by clicking on slide 23 and then clicking on the shortened URL, which is going to take you to a forced copy. This is a workflow option for educators who are looking for different ways of doing things. So a forced copy, the benefit is that everyone gets a copy of the document in their own drive and they can edit it as they wish. And that's what this is. If you would like to make a forced copy, I'll show you how really quickly. You just go up here to the URL and you change the last 4 words to edit. And I'm on my actual document, okay? But if I went back and changed the words edit to copy, I get this. And so this link is what I put on the slideshow here for all of you. So your job would be to just click make a copy, just like I am. And then now I have a new copy of the document, and anyone else who clicks there does as well. So it's a really fun little way of pushing out documents. And the reason you want to have your own is because we want to show you, this is a time to just kind of practice and play a little bit, okay? So for Google Doc Design School, we have these little steps that you can take. And I'm just gonna quickly show you a couple of things. For example, let's say I'm gonna make a text set around the topic of the civil rights. I was thinking about this today, and we have Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthdays coming up soon, and just a lot going on. And so we're going to start, that's what my text set's going to be about. So you might want to start with inserting an image. So down below here, I'm going to first put it in print layout view, and then I'm going to insert an image. And once I insert image, I can do a Google search within the Google Doc. It's really great. So I can put my topic there and pick a picture that might be really representative of setting the tone for my text set. I really love this picture of the March on Washington, so I'm going to pick that one. And when you do put images in your Google Docs in this way, we know that they're Creative Commons images. You can also go to Google Images and find images as well. Once an image is on a Google Doc, you can center it, and you can really just kind of make it the size that you want, and you go from there. So there's my image, and then it says the next step is File, Page Setup, choose a page color. Let's say I want to change the background color of my Google Doc. I would go ahead to File, Page Setup, and right here it has Page Color. Now my image is kind of black and white, so I always start to kind of build a HyperDoc around that first image or a text set. So I'm just going to pick like a light gray. You'll notice here that the margins can be modified in the same place. I typically like to do 0.5 all around. Just gives a little bit of space and gives me more room for learning. If I make this image a little smaller, then I'll have everything there. There we go. All right, so next direction says go for inserting a table. How do we insert tables for multimedia text sets? We go to Insert, Table, Insert, and they have this little grid. And so you can go ahead and add like a 3x5 table, and there you have it. Notice on my table now, the top row is got 3 columns, but let's say I just want that row to just have 1 column. So if I go back to table, I can merge those cells together. Or maybe I don't want the background in my table to be light gray. I want it to be another color. So I can change a lot about my table in table properties. So when I click there, I can make the border a different color, maybe a dark gray and a thicker line. I can make the cell background maybe white. I can align the table in the center of the page, and I can make sure that all the words are centered. And there you go. Now I'm starting to put my text set together. So the next directions say if you want to add some tables, go ahead and some rows, you would just go ahead and tab over, add some more rows. Maybe I decided I don't need 3 columns. I only need 2, so I can go back and again merge these. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. What do we do? We don't mean to do what we do. We just undo right there. So you can go through in this way or what have you to make it 2 columns. Some other things I wanted to show is how to format the images. If you want to click on an image, you can then go ahead and put a border around an image as well, and any color that you want it to be. So there's a border. Some other things is how to link up some resources on the Google Doc. So what if I say, watch this video? All right, so I need to find a video now. I'm going to go to Insert. Oh, sorry. I'm going to go to another tab and look for Civil Rights. Search for a video, and I like videos typically that are like about under 4 minutes or so. So I'll choose 0 to 4 minutes. And let's see, maybe I'm going to pick this one right here. I have not previewed it, so I'm not sure, but I'll just put it there. I get the link for the video, copy it, go back to my document, select the words, click on the insert link, and paste it. Now, some of you might know all of this already, but we just wanted to spend about 5 minutes or so going over some Google Doc things. If you have more questions, we are running out of time, just email your instructor or ask us and we can help you with all of that. I did want to show you the finished product because I actually made one of these a while ago. So here's a multimedia text set for civil rights. This is what it turned out to look like. And notice this is just very simple. There's 5 or 6 different links with the resources on there. So that's Design School. Next week, Sarah will be going over Google Slides and how to use slides in more depth. So if you're interested and you want to learn more about some things, just want to highlight that we do have a YouTube channel. And on our YouTube channel, we have some stories of teachers who've already been interviewed, and they tell us about how HyperDocs have changed their classrooms, and they share their HyperDocs. So there's 6 episodes, and we've linked them all here for you. So if you're someone who teaches one of these same subjects, you might want to check out that story from that teacher because they're amazing people. We call them our HyperDoc experts. They've just been doing a lot of great things with all the concept. And then the last thing that we kind of want to review is what we're going to do this week and wrapping it up. So first week, we ask that you read chapter 1 and that you complete the chapter 1 HyperDoc. And within that, it'll ask you to create a multimedia text set. So here's the chapter 1 HyperDoc. And you'll notice that what we're modeling for you is a HyperDoc learning cycle, which we'll be talking about more next week, but the cycle is called Explore. So you first explore more multimedia text sets. Then we want you to think about how these can really change the thinking in your classroom so you can respond here and explain and how they're meeting all students' needs. This is just a fun little thing. There's a Google Draw that is embedded on this HyperDoc, and it asks you to highlight who you are. So if you click twice on the drawings, then you're there in the image, and you would just pick a shape like a circle, and you would put that around who you are in your role, and then you can go ahead and change that. And once you do that, then the image will show up on the Google Doc, and it's just something to model as a way to do HyperDocs too. But I will undo that before we move on because you guys will be making a copy of this document. And that is the other thing. This document, the way that you're going to do it is you would go File, make a copy, make your own copy, complete it. Once you've finished completing it, you're going to need to go to your share settings and change it to anyone with the link can comment. And that's because not just your instructors can comment, so can other people in the cohort. Once you change the share settings, you're going to take that URL. You're going to go back to the scope and sequence document, which is right here, actually, scope and sequence, where we started. You're going to go down to the groups, find your name. For example, let's look at group number 3 for my group. And you'll go to your group document, and you will go ahead and link it up. And I love seeing this. Look, we've got Todd and Jen. They've already got their pictures on there. It's so exciting. And Jen included her website. Thank you, Jen. We love to learn about you. And then you would just link it up in the same way that you link anything on a Google Doc. You select it, and then you link it. I already did my multimedia text set for this week because I just recently made one after attending a professional development. So I put mine on there, but notice that your instructors have modeled up here. You would put your homework there and then your text set there. So now that everything's there, we can get on here and look at each other's work. And Todd and Jen can look at each other's text sets and have conversations. In fact, if you see one of your friends in another cohort, you know which group they're in, and you can always hop into other cohorts as well. We really want to build like a great online community. We work hard at doing that. We want you to connect with each other, and we want to connect with each of you as well. So that is it pretty much. You just need to be able to turn it in and then interact with your group. I hope we didn't go too quickly, but can't wait to see what you come up with the multimedia text sets. Thank you for joining us today. Next Monday, it is a holiday, but we still will be recording at 4 o'clock, and Sarah will be leading chapter 2 on how to create HyperDocs. So stay tuned, and we'll see you online. Until then, thanks so much.
Hey, it was great to talk with all of you. You know, our student from Korea ended up showing up, so thank you so much for taking the time, and Bangladesh.
Wow.
So it's so nice that we're going to connect with people from all over the world.
And really look at this as an opportunity to learn from each other about different educational systems and philosophies and pedagogy. It's just amazing. So, and if you have new ideas for us, please share.
Lots of chatting. So
Awesome.
let's keep the conversation going in our small groups on the doc. So please post lots of comments.
Yes.
So thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. All right, everybody, have a wonderful week. We'll see you next week.